Welcome. Tonight, the mayor will be joining us via Zoom. He is out of town, so I'll be running the meeting. He will be unable to vote, but he will be able to speak on certain matters. I'll start with some introductions. From my left and to your right, we have Assistant Town Manager Malia Gordon, Commissioner Renee Gardner, Commissioner Larry Whitley, who's looking awful fancy tonight. Town Manager Becky Hawk, Town Attorney Charlie Buckley, Commissioner Mark Tefano, Commissioner Gina Hoover, Commissioner John Urban, Town Clerk Lori Canapino, Communications Coordinator Maureen Keith, and our Planning Director Jay Camp. We will move on to agenda item number 2, invocation. Mr. Tefano.
For those that wish to, please pray with me. Dear Father, we come before you again humbly and imperfect in every way. And we ask that you bless the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart and the decisions and the deliberations, and that they're acceptable in your sight tonight. I ask that you uplift those that put themselves in harm's way for us every day. Give them courage, give them strength, give them peace, and their families. And I ask, Lord, that all of us open up our hearts and bless those who are in need with the blessings that have been so abundantly given to us. And I pray all this in your glorious, mighty name. Amen.
Amen. Now we'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone will stand. Moving to agenda item number 4, we will receive a presentation from the Matthews Alive folks. Leanne. Our former mayor, Jim Taylor.
I'm not going to start over again, Maureen, am I? But about 14 or 15 of us continued the tradition in Stumptown Park, and we enjoyed each other's company, played some music, had some picnic food, and had a great time, and just continued that theme of Matthews Alive. None of us ever thought that we would be faced with the exact same thing again in 2021, when we were all ready to have the festival, and in about 35 days out, I had a conversation with Novant. Jason and I had a conversation, and it became very obvious with all the numbers that were going on around the country in other parts of the world that the trends were a couple of weeks ahead of us, that it was in our best interest. The right decision was to cancel 2021, and we were so sorry and so disappointed that we had to do that. But for 2022, we came back, and come heck or high water, we were going to have a festival. Somehow, some way, we're going to have a festival no matter what. That was the theme of this year. And I got to tell you, we have 12 board members. 10 of them are voting board members. They're the hardest working board members that I've seen. 6 of them are brand new to their jobs. And I'm going to go through each one of those briefly in a minute. But before I do that, I want to bring up Jason Byrne from Novant. Jason, as he's coming up here, I want to talk a little bit about Jason. Jason is the CEO, the president of Novant Matthews Medical Center, the premier flagship branch of the Novant system. And they have been a sponsor for many, many years. And we couldn't put on the festival without them. And we truly love their enthusiasm through the years. I've known every president of that facility since it opened up. And Jason is just keeping on that great tradition. So Jason, say a few words about your sponsorship of the event and about Novant itself, please.
Thank you, Jim. I'm Jason Burns, and I'm happy to be here on behalf of Novant Health. And I was told I have 45 minutes to go through in painstaking details through the last 3 years. But in all seriousness, we really are grateful for the support of our community. It is an absolute privilege that we get to serve as your community hospital and that we get to take care of our neighbors, of our friends, of our family members. And that's really what we do at Novant Health and at Novant Health Matthews Medical Center. So when we had an opportunity to support events like Matthews Alive that brings the community together, that celebrates, it gets us all in fellowship and gets us outside, we are so pleased to be able to do so. So again, I would like to thank you all for your continued support of our caregivers. I'll say that the state of the hospital is that things are going well, that our caregivers are in that state of recovery, as we all are from ups and downs from the last couple of years, and that we continue to be proud to grow. We are adding a 150,000 square foot addition to Matthews Medical Center that will increase our capacity to grow with the community. And so thank you all for your time. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak and say hello and give you all a brief update. And we'll continue on with the presentation for Matthews Alive. Thank you, Jim.
Jason, thank you, Jason. I mentioned earlier we have a very hardworking board that spends hours and hours and hours throughout the year, not to mention 15, 16, 17 hours a day during Labor Day running this festival. And I think each and every one of them need to be recognized in some fashion. So in no particular order, I'm going to call their name and tell a little bit about what they did. And if you're here, if you come on up and just stand behind me with Jason as well. And again, this is in no particular order, but Lori Bagley, who's in the front row up here. Lori ran our hospitality group this year. And I tell you, she did a phenomenal job. We get there in the morning, we had something to eat, we had food. She helped out and prepared and organized all the hospitality for our sponsors, not only us, and it was a tremendous job. And Lori did a terrific job doing that. Chris Melton, who some of you may know, is our secretary. He's not here tonight, but he did a wonderful job. That's right. He was also the main stage MC. And Chris, as you all know, if you know Chris, he's like a kid in a candy store. He loves being up on stage and introducing all the bands. He did a phenomenal job. Eileen, I'm going to pronounce her name wrong. Sleeger. I got her close. Eileen Sleeger was our social media person. She has been that for the last couple of years. Tremendous. She's sitting there in our command center answering questions on the spot from Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. Did a phenomenal job. And she is, like I said, she's not here. Brian Lee. Brian ran our food. All the food vendors we had that everybody seemed to love. Brian stepped up this year, joined the board, and ran that flawlessly. Did a wonderful job. The move-in was one of the smoothest move-ins I think I've seen in the last 20 years. So Brian did a terrific job on that. Carol Lawrence is not here this evening. She was our treasurer. She spends hours. Yes, she deserves a big round of applause. For one thing, she signed every single check that are going to be distributed this evening. So she's a very, very popular person. But she doesn't get out very often. She spent the entire festival in behind the Bradford Clinic, and she was there one evening till after 1 o'clock in the morning, making sure everything was balanced. So she deserves a big pat on the back for everything she has done. Tina Whitley, Tina is not here. She's in Arizona, I think, this evening. Tina ran our parade. We are thrilled about the parade. Over 100 entrants in our parade. Wonderful this year. She worked very hard to make that happen, and we were very happy and thankful for that. Amanda Howard. Amanda's not here, is she? No. Amanda ran our arts and crafts, our small, what do we call it? Small shops. Thank you. So I was going to say vendors, our small shop area. Again, Amanda was new this year, but that was one of the smoothest move-ins as well. A phenomenal effort by Amanda, and she did a tremendous job. Steve Cash. Where's Steve? Steve Cash. Steve Cash ran, yes. Steve was helped Matthews Alive many years ago and came back to help us out this time running our family fun and all of our nonprofits. He organized getting all the nonprofits lined up to do their jobs, because at Matthews Alive, we don't give anybody anything. Every nonprofit works for what they get out of the proceeds of this festival. And I'll get back to that in a second, but Steve did a wonderful job doing all of that and also handling all the fire drills that happened throughout the event. Dennis Green. Dennis Green. Many of you know Dennis up here on the board and with the town and in the audience. But I'll tell you, in 18 years of sitting behind the dais, I don't think I ever got to know Dennis Green more than I got to know him in 4 days. Dennis Green, the man, the myth, the legend. Dennis is a funny guy. Dennis is hilarious, but he got to come out of his shell. But Dennis did a wonderful job running logistics. We had a hole this year. The person that ran logistics for us for the last 20 years retired. And Dennis was, the nod was given to Dennis to help us out, and he ran with it, no problem at all. And Dennis, we couldn't have done it without you, so thank you very much for all you did. Tyler Price is not here this evening, but he's our legal advisor. We don't engage him too often, but it's always good to know he's there when we have a problem or we have a question. But he is our legal advisor and has been for the last couple of years. And I'm making sure I've gotten good. Last but not least, all right, yeah, last but not least is our executive director, Leanne Moore. So Leanne, come on up here. Leanne is the person who runs around 365 days a year, balancing all the activities of the town on one hand, and then Matthews Alive on the other. And she has different priorities. It gets pulled in different directions by y'all's board and by our board. But she comes through. She's a trooper. She did very well, and I'm very proud of what Leanne has done. Every one of these people behind me, including the ones that are not here, we're like a big family. We'll argue, we'll yell at each other, we'll scream at each other, we'll probably leave a room pissed off at each other. But at the end of the day, we got each other's back. And it really became evident during the festival when things would pop up. We had a couple of issues that popped up, nothing major, but we solved them. Every single one of them we solved without a problem. So it worked out very well. Now, before I go any farther, Leanne, have I forgotten anybody at all? Make sure. All right. Well, the reason we're here this evening, I said earlier, we have all these nonprofits that are here tonight to get a check for all their hard work. We have over 40 nonprofits that we give back to every year, or this year anyway, over 40. Not a single one of them is here getting a donation or a freebie. They work thousands and thousands of hours, thousands and thousands of individual people helping out throughout the festival. And we're happy to say that we are thrilled to be able to give back to this community. I'm going to ask everybody that's here, if you go up and stand up in front of the dais real quick before I tell everybody what the big number is, and then we'll surprise everybody. The one big thing that I'm excited about, there's two numbers I'm very excited about this evening. The first number is that Matthews Alive with this festival has gotten over the $2 million mark. We have given back more than $2 million to the nonprofit organizations of the town of Matthews. And we are ecstatic and thrilled to be able to do it. And again, you all worked very hard for it. But this year's event, drum roll. All right, this year's event, we had a very good year, but like everybody else in the world and in the United States, everything costs us more. So while we made more money, we had to spend more money to make money. But at the end of the day, like I said earlier, we exceeded the $2 million mark. Our total give back from beginning of Matthews Alive to date is $2,041,000. So over that month. But this year's event is generating $119,515.
It's very difficult to hear, but
can you hear me now?
There we go. I just want to say, Jim, you and I talked a lot during the festival, and just seeing the sheer joy of everybody to have the festival back. So many people smiling of all ages, such large crowds. So thank you to Novant and all of our sponsors and all the volunteers, and in particular the people standing there in front of the dais. I totally recognize the countless hours you guys put in, and it's very much appreciated. And another $119,000 to our nonprofits. Great job, guys. Awesome. Very proud of you.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate it. And I do need to say a couple of real quick thank yous. We couldn't put this festival on without the support of the town, the police department, the fire department, public works, parks and recreation. as well as all the nonprofits and the support of the town throughout the many years. This is truly a partnership within the town of Matthews. Matthews Alive has become a premier festival around the state. I'm going to say around the country, why not go big? Matthews Alive started out small. I got to give credit to the original festival in the town of Matthews, the Stumptown Festival, which was I'm guessing about 20 years in when it ceased to be run, which allowed Matthews Alive to be born in 1993. 1993, yeah. So anyway, again, 515,000 to all the nonprofits. We're going to celebrate. We're going to give all the individual checks out after this event. But thank you, town. Thank you, everybody else. Right. So. Yeah, we're for the nonprofits, we're going to be distributing the individual checks around the corner to the left. Just meet us back there and we'll take care of everything. And we'll give you back to your regularly scheduled meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you. And our fans have left. I do want to add that I have heard this year that so many people had a great time. It was a great turnout. It was a wonderful event. I was happy to attend, and we are very grateful for all the folks who put it on. Now we are going to move on to adopt the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions, Mrs. Manager?
No, Mayor Pro Tem.
I will now entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Mayor Pro Tem, we adopt the agenda as printed.
Second.
We have a motion made by Commissioner Whitley, a second by Commissioner Gardner. All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously. We will now move on to the public comment. Anyone who registered in advance will speak first, and after that, anyone in the audience or Zoom audience who wishes to speak may do so. Speakers will have 5 minutes. Our first speaker tonight will be Howard Labner. And make sure to state your name and address for the public record.
I'm Howie Labiner. I'm Chair of the Matthews Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. I'm here to talk tonight about the bonds. There's been a lot of discussion around town about the increased cost of these bonds to the taxpayers. And while nobody likes a tax increase, including me, these are needed for a number of reasons. Matthews is it's an attractive place to be because of its quality of life. And the quality of life and the residents encourage business to come in, including retail, office, and industrial, which is starting to come into town. A large number of mixed-use residential and office complexes are in the works, including Graylock and a major development over where the Dollar Movie Theater used to be. There are approximately 1,800 townhomes either approved or in development right now also to come into town, with more likely to come, as well as a number of single-family units and developments. There are a number of lots now in development, especially by 485, that probably 3-4 years ago, no developer in the world would have wanted to touch. But those are an ongoing issue for large-scale multi-use developments. Every one of these things increases stress on the town's roads. If you ever try to get through downtown Matthews at 5-6 o'clock at night, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is literally impossible except to be in a big city bumper to bumper kind of situation. Without improvements and getting traffic flowing, we're going to choke off our attractiveness to retail and industrial development in the future. And we have a problem because South Carolina, for example, has been incredibly aggressive in trying to court those businesses that we, quite frankly, want to increase our tax base. Now, parks are an amenity that homeowners want, kids want, and have worked to make Matthews a go-to destination. No one else in town, even including most of Charlotte, has anywhere near the parks and amenities that are offered here in Matthews. But we have some major issues. Land is disappearing fast. Land for parks, for other uses is becoming a very hard commodity to get. Park usage is up, and unless we expand our parks and our offerings, we're going to be in a position where we're not going to be able to meet the demands and keep our residents happy. Stumptown Park is literally bursting at the seams. And while it can expand with a few residential lots, the expansion is small. And in all reality, that is going to take a long time until those lots are able to be purchased by the town up for sale to do it. We have 90 acres at Purser-Halsey Park, which is the park up on Matthews Min Hill Road by the traffic circle, for those of you that don't know where it is. But it cannot be developed without the bond due to its size. And of the bond that's being issued, the $14 million park bond, 9.6 million, if I have my figures right, is earmarked for the Purser-Halsey development. So 2/3 of that bond is going to that one park, or earmarked for that one park. Annual payouts, and I've heard this suggested before, wasn't the town just take some money every year and go ahead and do it? That's a great concept, but annual payouts are not going to get the park done. This is a project where if you do it as one project, it's going to be expensive, but you're going to get some economies of scale and some bargains. If you do it as 9 $1 million projects, you're not going to have that same thing, and it's going to take literally years to get it done. Purser-Halsey is set to have performance space, so we can possibly move some of our big events like the symphony and some of the concerts out there so that there's room for more people and things to do. It's going to have a splash pad, a playground, bike trails, a dog park, community gardens, and a pond. And is the only area in the entire town of Matthews that's large enough that the town has, or that appears to be available for it, to get this done. We need to take the long view here. We need to look at the future and not just at the current cost. The failure to pass these bonds is going to hurt us in the long run, and it's going to cause the work, which is going to have to be done at some point between transportation and parks, to cost the taxpayers Matthews a heck of a lot more money in the long run. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Next, we have Jim Dedman.
Name is Jim Dedman. I live at 1330 Golden Hill Road in Matthews. Thank you, Laura Canapino, for reading my letter of disgust with Commissioner Gardner over her behavior against Commissioner Tufano at the September 26th meeting. The allowance by Mayor Higdon for this to continue, even after she realized that she was showing a slide insulting Mr. Tufano. Gardner continued insulting a fellow commissioner, and our mayor let it ride. Mayor Higdon also told town staff to include invitations to information meetings with area merchants only to commissioners in favor of the bonds, thus excluding Commissioners Tufano and Hoover. 2 commissioners voted by taxpayers to be their voices on town affairs were censored for participating. Mr. Higdon said he did not see this as unethical. Perhaps that is part of the problem here. Recently, our mayor pro tem put Matthews in the media spotlight with his critical tweets against David Tepper, Baker Mayfield, and Matt Rule of the Carolina Panthers, saying, quote, "I don't think I have the authority to, but I would have banned Matt Rule, David Tepper, and Baker Mayfield from Matthews." Thank goodness he isn't our mayor. Responses to his tweet included, "It may be funny, but good luck getting any support from Tepper for Matthews," to which McCreel responded, "We don't want half-built practice facilities." Or another person posted, "I highly doubt when they're coming to Matthews for anything." Another, "This kind of behavior is why you have pro tem next to your job title." Or typical political hack, overstepping the bounds and ruining the lives of others. And lastly, there was one that was simply, "Dude, you're an idiot." The quote followed after Rule's firing with, quote, "And people say local government doesn't do anything," as if to take credit for the firing. This brought a couple tweets, responses, quote, "Certainly not anything worthwhile. Honestly, grow up." Or another, "What an awful thing to say about someone else's misfortune as a leader." Considering the personal manner with which this was aimed at Mr. Tepper, if it was brought to his attention, I doubt he would be pleased. A successful man who has acquired the status of billionaire, criticized by a 20-something who has been successful at having his parents pay for his 2 political campaigns. Matt Rule was so successful as a college coach to the point that he was picked from a group of candidates to reach the pinnacle in his profession to coach an NFL team. He now joins the ranks of Nick Saban and Steve Spurrier, who as college coaches also didn't succeed in the pros. Not bad company, but still under the scrutiny of a 20-something who runs a collectible card shop in Indian Trail, and once again, not supporting a tax base of a town he wishes to raise taxes on. Matthews. Then there's Baker Mayfield, player who was the first walk-on freshman to start in an FBS season opener at quarterback. Mayfield left Texas Tech to go on to walk on again at Oklahoma and again earning the starting quarterback job. Later, he went on to win the Heisman Trophy with a sweeping majority with the third highest percentage points and the first walk-on athlete in Heisman history to win the trophy. Yet, he is criticized by his performance by our jolly Mayor Pro Tem, whose own political success started as a result of Commissioner Barbara DeMint resigning from the position, allowing McCool to win a seat by 1 vote. Perhaps our Mayor Pro Tem needs to stop mentioning our town or his position on the board when making such poor attempts at humor on a public social media forum. He has made the people who entrusted him with their votes look foolish, and has embarrassed our town in public for all to see. And lastly, just a note to Commissioner Gardner, who continues to be the administrator of her Preserve Matthews Facebook page in which town matters are discussed. While she has been quick recently to question the vote no on bonds folks for following election laws, according to an attorney from the League of Municipalities, censoring or blocking anyone from access to making comments on her Preserve Matthews Facebook page violates freedom of speech rights. Articles from the North Carolina local government law, as well as the ACLU of NC State, that according to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the interactive portion of public officials' Facebook page is a public forum. So an official cannot block people from it because of the opinions they hold. Since you crave the last word on everything, wouldn't it be interesting to see if you did that in front of a judge? Can you say contempt of court? Because basically you could be taken to court for that, because you're basically censoring someone's freedom of speech on that page, and you're representing yourself as a commissioner. As I stated in my letter from my last meeting, ethics seem to be a term, some of you have no idea what the meaning is. And that's it, okay. Vote no against the bonds, because I don't want to see these folks with this kind of ethics.
Your time is up, sir. Thank you. Next, we have Doug Rose.
Good evening. Doug Rose, 737 Elizabeth Lane, Matthews, North Carolina. And my comments are directed to the 2022 bond referendum. Good morning, or good evening again, Board of Commissioners. I have lived in Matthews for 3 years now. As a retiree, I have become intimately involved in our town matters. I am currently on 2 committees, the Matthews Veterans Advisory Committee and the Planning Committee. I volunteer at the Matthews Novant Hospital, which you heard from Jason earlier today, and I'm currently enrolled in the Matthews 101 course. I have seen both growth and decline, especially with small businesses and closures in our town in this short time. I was here when the last Board of Commissioners campaign, where I saw and heard our candidates run for office to support the town of Matthews and pledge to help it grow and advance into a place where all of our residents, new and old, can be proud of. As the MVEC chairman in 2020 and 2021, I worked with our Parks and Recs Committee and our vets to approve and establish the new Matthews Veterans Park, a great win for our town. I would be remiss in not recognizing Commissioner Mark Tofano's endeavors in this park. I watched the previous town hall meetings, debates on the pursuit of the general obligation bonds to finance various transportation and parks and recs projects. I am not a financial expert, but having read the Moving Matthews Forward literature, I can say that I personally will vote for the bond referendum. There are signs posted around town saying, vote no for this $35 million bond, and that now is not the right time to raise our taxes. 2 things that I've heard, and I'm sure many of you have heard that and learned, is that in life, you can count on death, and taxes. In this case, I believe in our mayor, our town manager, our town board of commissioners, that they have the citizens' best interests at heart, and an increase now of approximately $184 annually for a projected home value of $500K, and again, that's an estimate, is reasonable to upgrade and improve the quality of life for the town and the residents. My question is, if not now, then when? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Crest Query.
Hi, I'm Chris Query, and I'm standing on a different side this time. So good evening to Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor, and Commissioners. And I want to speak to you a little bit about the bonds. And before I get it, there's one thing that a person's got against the reason they won't vote for the bonds, and I need to let y'all know that, is that the lease on the Purser Park is not long enough to guarantee and spend that much money. So would the town please go back to the county and get some extra length of time to guarantee those funds will be used right? But as a past commissioner and mayor, 30-some years I served the town, and over the years, the things that y'all are asking for in the bonds are, I think, what are necessary for the town. We have talked about them over years, and we put them off, and it's back again and off again. And I think the fact that you're asking for the bonds now, I think is an appropriate time to do that. And the tax increase we're talking about is minuscule compared to what it would cost to do it any other way. And the bonds will allow us to pay out for a long period of time. So if I would, everybody please vote for the bonds. I think they're a good thing. And this has come from somebody who's lived here all their life. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Corey Hughes.
Name's Corey Hughes. I live at 1722 Reverdy Oaks Drive here in Matthews. Not only a resident, but I'm also a business owner here in Matthews as well. I've been in my home for 25 years. My wife and I moved to Matthews and started a family with our son. And one of the things that attracted us was the small town feel of the community. I had grown up in a very, very, very small town in Western Pennsylvania, but it allowed me to appreciate the camaraderie and the sense of community that a small town provides. We also appreciate that because of our location, Matthews inevitably would grow. Therefore, we've always been drawn to leaders that appreciate the need to balance growth and the preservation of the community. A balance that I think each of you have campaigned on in the past in one form or another. Improved connectivity and walkability, advocates for the continued development and enhancement of parks and recreation, smart growth. Again, all sentiments that you've said. The passage of these bonds addresses all the above and does so in a very smart way. At about $14 a month, most homeowners comes with $3.50 a week. The bottle of soda that we're talking about. Improved walkability, improved connectivity, improved and expansion of our parks, or a bottle of soda a week. That's what we're talking about. I encourage you to endorse these bonds and also ask my fellow citizens of Matthews to vote yes on these bonds on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. If there is anyone in the audience who wishes to speak, and may come up now, and anyone in the Zoom audience may use the raise hand feature to ask. Do you have anyone else in the audience who would like to speak? Or anyone via Zoom, Maureen? Okay, I believe there is one comment that needs to be read into the record. Lori?
Yes, there is a written comment from Tylene Earhart of 313 North Fremont Street in Matthews. She writes, "Dear Commissioners, I want to address the vote no signs that have apparently been spearheaded by at least one commissioner. As I stated in my last public comment, why does it have to be about you? Literally everything is about you. From the moment you were elected, you have made it about you. A no vote is saying no to accessibility. Did you consider that we are severely lacking in handicap parking spaces on Trade and that the majority of sidewalks will not accommodate a mobility device? That the only way a person can enjoy an event at Stumptown Park in a mobility device is from the looped sidewalk? The gravel area where the majority of vendors set up is impassable. Did you consider those you are saying no to? It certainly doesn't appear so. A more accessible downtown will lead to increased business and will show that Matthews cares about its residents of all abilities. Often able people completely forget those with disabilities. You don't consider us in the long-term vision, and you certainly don't advocate for us. If you did, you wouldn't be spending unnecessary money for a completely inaccurate, false campaign. I know for a fact you have had several meetings to understand how a bond works and are still comfortable sharing false information. Matthews is growing. You know this as your property value has increased. Let's be honest, you won't be around as long as a younger family. Why would you not want to leave the town better than when you found it? The businesses in town want this. The majority of people I've spoken with want this. As a commissioner, it's your duty to listen to your constituents, all of them, regardless if you agree with them. Please do your job, the one you were elected to do. We deserve better than what you have been giving us. Thank you, Tylene.
Thank you for reading that, Lori. Next, we will move on to the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve consent agenda A through E.
We have a motion made by Commissioner Whitley and a second by Commissioner Hoover. All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously. Next, we will move on to agenda item number 8, unfinished business. We will consider a contract for a comprehensive and downtown plan. Jay Camp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. All right, finally, we're almost there. We've got the contract, we've got the scope. I wanted to briefly go over, well, there's numerous pages to the scope. I wanted to talk a little bit about the final deliverables. You'll see on page 15 of the memo, you have 7 main deliverables: vision, guiding principles, community character, our future land use map, which sort of is the roadmap. So when we have these zoning discussions or when a developer comes into town, we've got something that the community's weighed in on what the character of that area might be in the future. Recommendations, policy statements, focus area plans. Very important for me is the downtown design guidelines. That's something we've wanted to achieve for years. And finally, a zoning districts crosswalk, which is basically a scan of how the future land use plan and then our existing zoning codes interact with each other and potential changes we need to make after we adopt, or hopefully after we adopt the comp plan. So with all things planning, it's never super simple. So we have 2 numbers for you this evening to consider. There is an optional item in the contract that raises the amount by roughly $20,000. That is a scenario planning process and also an update to our sub-area model. Back in 2020, the lead planner on this with a firm called City Explain developed a sub-area model for the town that looked at transportation and land use connection. And we also, I think, did an initial run of that, Dana. I've asked Dana to speak for just a moment because I anticipated questions. Unless you guys are ready to vote, I thought she could maybe give you just a few bullet points on what that optional item in the contract does. So I'll turn it over to Dana. Thank you.
Good evening. So just a quick overview. The sub-area model is what we use to talk about John Street and being able to prove to NCDOT what actually things can handle when we did that, when we created that sub-area model. So there's 2 parts of it. So the one of our consultants who's going to be on this project, he helped us do one segment of this, which is basically the socioeconomic data. So when you do a new comp plan, you're creating new densities in the future, and that's how you model something. And the other part of that is a transportation piece. And so there's another firm, Clearbox, who will actually run the model. So when we did the model work back in 2020, we got a grant from, or a reimbursable 80-20 match from CRTPO. That call is once a year. So if you were to hold off, we would apply for it next fall and get it then. But what we need is hopefully a comprehensive look at this, because right now we're working with NCDOT and we need to know the latest and greatest in terms of our land use decisions and really tie that together with our transportation network. Those things go hand in hand, and it's very hard when we separate those out. So when Jay came to me and said, hey, is this something you're interested in? I'm like, yes, 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 please. So thank you, Jay, for putting it in there. And it's up to you all if that's something you're comfortable doing now, or if you want to wait for another year on that.
Thank you, Dana. So the final numbers we have for you, the recommended amount for the contract and the motion action is 269,500. If you all do not wish to move forward with scenario planning, the number would drop to 247,500. Either way, we appreciate your continuing support, and we will have a budget amendment ready for you at the next meeting. We do not have that ready tonight. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions, Commissioner Urban?
So Jay, we talked about this briefly today, actually.
Mhm.
Just playing devil's advocate here. We talked about the sub area plan and basically the sort of initial modeling, and Dana can talk to this, said, you know, it looks like East John Street will be fine
Right.
if parts A, B, C, D, if the planets all align and things go. So I guess my question would be is, because I know Mr. Higdon doesn't like studies, what is the extra 20 grand worth it to find out what we already know?
Okay, so the difference is that when you run a model each time, you look at the densities, and with the new comp plan, you're changing those densities. So the assumptions we used were the planning document. So we're changing our assumptions so that we may get the same exact results, and that would be awesome. But in order to say to NCDOT with clarity and accuracy, we would say, okay, we just redid our comp plan and we just reran the model based on those land uses, and everything still works. And that's what I keep saying that over and over because at this moment it's true. But when we update our comp plan, I won't be able to say that with certainty because the land use changes, and the way the model is run is there's TAZs, so traffic analysis zones, and they basically have data points of how much density there is, how much industry there is, how much commercial there is, and how much traffic each zone generates. And so we're changing the amount of density in each of those zones. So we need to connect the land use with the transportation and run it and see if that's still the case.
So let me do a follow-up then.
Sure.
So does that mean that it needs to be something that's done concurrently now, or with the fact that maybe if you got the comp plan up and running and came back to us in 8 months to a year?
So, and the urgency I see with it is that NCUT wants us to come to a decision with them. We are currently working with them on John Street, trying to figure out the best path forward. My best path forward is for us to be able to preserve that $25 million and rescope it, but we don't know if that's going to happen yet. And the more ammunition is the wrong word, but the more information I have to have a full picture of what we're dealing with, the better. So again, it's up to you. If you want to wait, that's fine, but it will hinder, I think, our ability to negotiate currently with NCDOT.
And is this company that can do, they have the quote unquote bench depth right now to incorporate all this, or would they be getting to it in 6 to 8 months anyway? Meaning, because a lot of companies are very, very busy, whether they're engineers, civil, or whatever. The point is, you sign on the dotted line today, and they say, "Well, that's fine. We have a backlog of 6 months. We're going to get to it in 6 months."
I don't know did you talk to? It didn't seem like there was any timing issues. I didn't talk to the consultants directly.
So I'm assuming in a perfect world, though, but if we came back to them a year from now, their contract fee would be going up because they're not going to hold something for a year.
I'm going to say yes. I don't know. I assume.
Thank you, David.
Mayor Higdon.
Thank you. To Commissioner Urban's point, he's spot on. I'm usually not in favor of doing studies, but in this case, I think we would be handing ammunition to NCDOT if we have data that's out of date. This is such an important conversation we're having with them. I want Dana to be able to present, perfect data so that there's no question by DOT, so that we can preserve that $25 million. So I would support doing that study now.
Commissioner Garner.
The consultant that we would use for the modeling, is that still Colgan Stone?
So Matt Newcaster, who's one of the team members, he was the one who did our original model. He's not with that particular, he's with one of the subs on the team. So he's in the team. He's not with that firm, right? He's his own. company.
He's going to lead the drafting of the comp plan.
So I guess I'm leading into is that possible that since we're putting all of these together, that we are potentially getting a better.
Yes. You're basically, we're trying to do efficiencies of dollars. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, that I would assume so. I mean, it was more expensive to do that initial plan. I cannot remember off the top of my head how much that plan cost that we did a couple years ago, but it was definitely more than $20,000. It was 60, 3 times as much. So this is, to update that socioeconomic TAZ zones and to rerun the model with the, whether there's new network that we're suggesting, whatever it is, so that we can do a holistic review of it.
I remember Matt being the one who shared the modeling with us, and that probably tilted my favor towards them when they came before us. But I do think that's an important thing to remember, is that they have done it in the past. They would be doing it again. And we are using that efficiency to our advantage.
My 2 cents is I agree. I think it's probably the right thing to do. You want to have the best updated information. DOT will use it against us if we don't. So it's probably the best for what's a small portion of this. I mean, it's 10% of what we're paying. So I'm in support of this as well. Is there any other comments, questions, or motions?
Well, then, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we authorize the town manager to enter into a contract with Colgin and Stone in the amount not to exceed the $269,500 for the comprehensive land use plan and downtown plan. And this is all outlined in the memo dated November 24th, 2022 by our illustrious Jay Camp Planning Director.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Urban, a second by Commissioner Whitley. All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to new business. We're going to receive an update on Silver Line options in Uptown Charlotte by CAT's Senior Project Manager, Andrew Mock, and I believe he's joining us via Zoom.
Hello, good evening. Can everyone hear me?
We gotcha.
Great, thank you. Can everyone see the screen okay? Thank you. Thank you, Matthews Board, for having me out again. I'm very pleased to be in front of you tonight to give you an update of the Link Silver Line and where we've been working on over the last couple months related to the alignment of Center City. So I'm going to give you an overview of where we are and some of the outstanding analysis that's ongoing, and a preview of the public meetings, which will be November 1st and 2nd. Both those are virtual, and we're also doing an online survey. And so thank you, and I'll just jump right into it. So just as a reminder, the Link Silver Line project is a 29-mile long program which really spans from the town of Belmont in Gaston County the whole way along Wilkinson Boulevard, in and around Center City, Charlotte, out Independence Boulevard to the Village Lake area, then deviates over to Monroe Road through the town of Matthews and out to CPCC Levine, and ultimately into Union County. The colors that you see here are indicating the implementation strategy. So the first phase, or phase A, would be the southeast, and that would be the purple line. That shows from Charlotte Gateway Station to CPCC Levine as our first phase of implementation. Our second phase, or phase B, would go to the west from Charlotte Gateway Station to I-485 out near the airport. And the gray areas are outside of the MTC funding source and require a regional agreement. As far as the project timeline, we're in what's called pre-project development. It's the time before we enter into the formal federal FTA pipeline for funding. We have just finished the 15% engineering plan set. Your staff at the town of Matthews have been an integral part of that review. We're getting ready to step into the 30%. But one of the key things that we really need to decide and determine so we can really engineer the appropriate project is to figure out what is the Center City alignment, the Center City Charlotte alignment, before we enter 30% engineering, which is a much more higher level of definition of engineering, along with the draft environmental impact statement. Once that's complete, then we enter into what's called project development. That's the first real federal step that we enter into to get the funding for the pipeline. That needs to be completed in about 2 years. And you need to have the funding identified and also the FEIS, or the final environmental impact statement, completed at the end. We're on par to do that once we make this decision and take the next couple steps. Then we go into project engineering. That's writing your specifications, completing all your final construction drawings, and going into right-of-way acquisition, and then into construction, on into operations and revenue services. So to give a little background of the locally preferred alternative, and LPA is just the MTC parlance for the policy direction from our governing board that tells us what project we're pursuing. And the locally preferred alternative, or LPA, was adopted in Center City. That was adopted back in 2018 as part of system update. And that LPA was really had a couple different goals. And one of the primary goals was to make it to Charlotte Gateway Station as part of a one-seat ride, so there would not be a transfer. And it was assumed to be mostly at grade along 11th Street. When we got into the environmental process, the design environmental process, which we worked with town staff and the town board over the last couple of years, getting into the details of that, we really determined that it needed to really be more elevated along 11th Street because of all the Brookshire freeway ramps, all the road infrastructure, and it really increased the cost and the complexity of the project. We really had a 2-mile long bridge that went through Center City, Charlotte. Very, very expensive, very impactful to the community. And it also made it for a very difficult transfer between the Silver Line and the Blue Line, which was a major concern. So for our elected officials, really identified that as a concern. The elected officials in the city of Charlotte identified that as a concern, and they recommended that we initiate or engage with ULI, or the Urban Land Institute, and they came in and did a review of that alignment in the project, and identified that we should evaluate something called interlining. And really, I'll give it a little overview of what that is and kind of where we are in that analysis, with a goal to create a project that's more cost effective. It's more easily to be funded through the federal formula. So interlining, really pretty simple, but it's really just running 2 different railroads on the same tracks. So this would be like whenever, this is pretty common in Europe, a lot of big cities do interlining, but it would just be that the Silver Line would come in along Independence Boulevard and then merge into the Blue Line tracks. This is done on highways all the time, same sort of principle. It's just, and then we would have the trains for a Blue Line train and Silver Line train would alternate on those tracks. That's kind of the principle that we're evaluating. So just jumped right to the chase. Where we are is we've identified 3 alternatives in Center City. Of course, the first one is the locally preferred alternative, and that's noted to the top right as an 11th Street alternative. That is still our policy directive by the MTC to pursue. Number 2 is the shared Blue Line, and really what that does is really comes in and then merges into the Blue Line near 12th Street. It comes right off Independence and merges into the Blue Line at 12th. And then a newer alternative really comes in and merges into the Gold Line near Charlottetown and basically run down the Gold Line tracks. Now, one thing that we'd have to do as part of this is we'd have to improve the Gold Line so it meets our capacity and reliability goals, because we're operating a system that needs to be very reliable with light rail. So we would have to do upgrades to the Gold Line tracks to allow us to meet those reliability and capacity requirements. We couldn't rely on the existing Gold Line infrastructure to accommodate that. We're also evaluating, based on stakeholder feedback, a potential extension to the Moorhead Station, which is right near Panther Stadium, which is also near where Pipe and Foundry. So a lot of energy and excitement about getting to Moorhead for Panther games and all those events that happen in that area. So I'll give you a brief overview of each one of those alternatives and kind of where we're going as far as that engagement. So this is the LPA. This is what everyone has seen over the last couple of years and is our starting place. Again, it would be mostly elevated between Central Avenue and Charlotte Gateway Station. It would provide a connection at the Blue Line for transfers between the Blue and the Silver Line, but it would be, as currently conceived, it would be a vertical connection is required. And it would stop at Charlotte Gateway Station. Phase B would require an extension over the Norfolk Southern Railroad. So to get over to the Moorhead area for an extension, it would be much more complex. So we'd have to build a large bridge to get over the railroad tracks, which are an embankment. Here's just as a reminder, this is kind of what that guideway looks like, what you see in front of you is 11th Street. We would have a very long elevated structure to get along the edge of Center City. And then this would be the non-revenue tracks to the blue line, which is down below you. This would be the 11th Street station. The shared blue line alternative would be, relatively straightforward, coming in and then merging into the blue line tracks at this point. One of the interesting things and intriguing things with this alternative is that it provides you really seamless connectivity between the blue line. So you would have every blue line station in Center City and even into South End at Carson Boulevard would allow you to have a transfer. You would get off any one of those stations and be able to transfer easily to the next train, to a Silver Line or a Blue Line train within those same stations. So it makes those transfers very seamless. It would be really premium service, and it would have a really high-end amount of rider or runtime on the Blue Line. So a train every 5 to 7 minutes would be allowed in this area. But the downside of it is that there's no way to get to the west within the project scope without a transfer. So to get to the west, you would have to transfer at the Charlotte Transportation Center and get on an improved Gold Line, which would go off to the west. So that's something that has been a concern from the public and from the stakeholders, is that transfer to the west and requiring that transfer for folks who want to get to a Panthers game or go to the airport or wherever. And it does not provide an opportunity to get to Moorhead within Phase A because of that required transfer. So you can't get to a Panther Stadium in that. What this looks like, just is a very, very schematic view, because really we were going to take a picture of what it might look like, and it's just the blue line, right? It's just running a new train on different tracks. So it would really just be coming in, merging into this schematic with a stop here at Carson, just to give you a point of view for where this is in the city. Now, the newer idea that's come up, and it's really come up from a challenge that we were challenged to come up with an alternative that could get you to Moorhead as part of Phase A and Charlotte Gateway Station, but does not require a transfer and provides you some of those benefits that we were seeking with the interlining concept. And really, we come up with this alternative, which requires you to come in off Independence, merge into the blue line right near CPCC, really providing you an opportunity to connect between CPCC Levine and CPCC downtown. Pretty interesting concept, kind of like we did on the blue line with UNC Charlotte. And then it really would improve Trade Street and the Gold Line to allow for a reliable, we'd basically be building a median in Trade Street, kind of like we did on the blue line extension. So we could have reliability and then improve the stations along Trade Street and get you to Charlotte Gateway Station in Phase A, and a potential to make it to Moorhead in a much more simply than on the locally preferred alternative. And the difference, the distinction there is we are at down below grade, so we don't have to go up and over the railroad. We can go under the railroad, under the current bridge. So it's a relatively simple extension to Moorhead. So one of the trade-offs is it puts a little more onus on us to find a good maintenance facility. Maintenance facilities is the trade-off here, because it doesn't provide you as good of a connection to the blue line, and all of our vehicles have to be parked somewhere. Of course, have to be parked somewhere at night. So it puts more onus on creating a more fully fledged maintenance facility on the southeast side. So really, it looks like here's some examples. You see, this is done in Minneapolis, Salt Lake. There's a lot of systems that have this sort of look, where we would have a light rail in the middle of Trade Street with some traffic lanes on the outside. This is Charlotte Gateway Station on the above on the picture, and then a vertical circulation piece to connect folks up to the Amtrak and to the rail trail at that point. So we wanted to kind of, as we do in the past, when we look at different alternatives, we always compare them using a framework that we've identified with the stakeholders, which we call the benefits and risk framework. It really looks to maximize the benefits, meaning we want to, as quick of a travel time as possible for these alignments. We want as good of a connectivity as possible, as much development opportunity as possible. And that's not just physical development, but it's also personal development. We want to make sure that people have opportunities for economic mobility and upward mobility in some of these alternatives. But we want to minimize the costs and environmental impacts of those, and make sure that we have a project that we can implement with our coordinated partners. So we just want to kind of give you some high-level analysis of some of our findings so far. In our first look at travel time of this, but on a sample trip, we just kind of picked a sample trip, and this would be between Conference Drive and CTC, or the Charlotte Transportation Center. The best alternative that provides us that access is the shared Blue Line alternative, or option 2. It's about 27 minutes, and that's a one-seat ride straight into the CTC. I'm sorry, number 3 actually gives us 25 minutes. That's the shared Gold, which is 25 minutes, and again, a one-seat ride, and the shared Blue gives us about 27 minutes. So that's very premium service on both those without a transfer, while the LPA gives us a little slower trip, about 34 minutes. When we talk about access to Charlotte Gateway Station, or the Amtrak and the regional bus system, the system that provides us the best access to that is the LPA. It's a one-seat ride, about 27 minutes, and probably the worst of all those, because it requires a transfer, is option 2 with about 42 minutes. And the 3, the shared Gold Line, gives us a kind of a nice middle ground option. So it seems like, 1 and 2 give us are better in some ways than others, and 3 is pretty consistent amongst all of them. As it gets to local connectivity, we find that the local connectivity for the locally preferred alternative, the big thing that gets you is great access to Charlotte Gateway Station. So lots of great development over there, lots of great opportunities for access to Amtrak and all the improvements that are happening around Charlotte Gateway Station, but it misses a lot of key destinations like the Employment and Trade and Tryon, CTC, and CPCC. So it misses some opportunities, but hits some others pretty well. For the second one, it really provides really good access to Center City and the Blue Line, and it also reaches into the South End, which is an interesting little wrinkle, but it does require a transfer to the west. For Shared Gold Line, it hits all the bases as far as the key destinations in Center City. It hits, it could hit Panther Stadium, CGS, Trade and Tryon, CTC, CPCC. It hits a lot of the great destinations, but it misses some key neighborhoods along 11th Street of its 1st and 4th Ward. For development opportunities, first one really kind of hits probably the mark best as far as economic mobility, because it hits Charlotte Gateway Station, a lot of underutilized property along the 11th Street corridor. So it does hit a lot of really great economic development opportunities, but it misses some education and government services that are hit by others. Item 2 hits number 2 gets some of those opportunities along 11th Street for development. There's a lot of underutilized property over there, which was envisioned to be developed, but it misses Charlotte Gateway Station. Number 3, and one of the interesting things about number 3 is that it has opportunities for economic development, but it really has opportunities for some upward mobility by connecting some underinvested neighborhoods along the southeast corridor to opportunities for education, government services, and employment, so as well as access to CTC and CGS. So it hits a lot of those great points, which are going to improve upward mobility, but it does miss some economic development opportunities along 11th. As far as cost goes, this is a pretty simple one. The LPA is quite expensive because of the 2-mile-long bridge. Both the Shared Blue Line and Shared Gold Line are both substantially less expensive, even with a partial reconstruction of the Gold Line. So there is that's a pretty easy one, straightforward one to get your head around. For as far as environmental considerations, this again is kind of similar. The LPA has some pretty significant environmental concerns because of the bridge. There's a historic neighborhood called 4th Ward that the bridge goes directly adjacent to. It's got a lot of residential, a lot of historic character, and so there's definitely some concerns with that elevated guideway through there. Well, both 2 and 3 are, for the most part, using existing railroad rights-of-ways. So it's a little more straightforward from an environmental perspective. As far as the Moorhead extension, and this one again is pretty simple. It's really talking about how the feedback we received from the stakeholder and development community requesting us to evaluate that. Again, 2 of the 3 options can work within extending that to Phase A. It's about a half-mile-long extension to get us there. It's really just a matter of the complexity of that extension. One is more simple, and one is more complex and more expensive. So yeah, this would be something that we're going to ask some in our survey, ask for some folks from the public to provide some input on the value of this, and if we were to choose to add this recommend that we add this to the MTC, then we would amend it at the end of January with the other amendments. So regarding the path forward, we will be taking out a very similar presentation like this to the public. It's actually going to the Metropolitan Transit Commission on Wednesday night. So Mr. Mayor Higdon will have an opportunity to see this again. And then we would having our live virtual public meetings on Tuesday, November 1st at 5:30. And that will also be the beginning of our online open house. So on our website, you have an opportunity to review our public meeting materials and conduct and fill our survey. It's very important, and I would request anyone, maybe your PIOs or other ones, to put out some feelers for our survey, because we're asking some questions to the public about where people go, and the survey is going to be very important in our recommendation for these alignments. So it's very important for that one. The second meeting would be Wednesday, November 2nd at noon. So we would have a midday if folks are more comfortable dialing in at lunch. We have that opportunity. And then all these will be available on CAT's YouTube to watch the meetings and the questions the next day. So we're sending out about 33,000 mailers. So hopefully people are receiving them because they're going out soon. About 55 to 60 yard signs. We're reaching out to the entire corridor because really Center City Charlotte touches everybody, and this decision is really a project and corridor wide decision. So we have rider alerts on our transit vehicles. Again, the survey will be a big part of this. E-blasts through all our social media outlets, and media releases through all of our media list outlets. So again, we have MTC coming up next week, or actually Wednesday. November 1st and 2nd is the public meetings. November 7th will be the City of Charlotte Transportation and Planning Committee. December 12th and 16th, we would have an MTC information where we would be providing our recommendation based on that public feedback and stakeholder feedback. So this is moving pretty fast as far as what the information item would be. Then we would have our January 9th would be our Transportation Planning Committee, where we would be presenting the feedback and the recommendation, and then ultimately January 25th would be the action. With that was a lot of information in a very fast amount of time, so I'll pause and see if anybody has any questions.
Thank you for your very good presentation. It was very in-depth. Are there any questions? Mayor Higdon, is your hand raised?
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just want to thank Andy for such a thorough analysis and laying out all the pros and cons. It's really appreciated. I always find it really difficult to argue with Andy because he's got all the facts there and just lays it out for you. And as an appreciation, a few of us elected officials were at Windsor Run, the retirement community in town, last Friday, and we were talking about the Silver Line. And I said, can you imagine how difficult it is to build something like that with infrastructure already built everywhere all around it? So, Andy, I just want to say thanks. Echo what the Mayor Pro Tem said. Great presentation, and keep doing the great work.
Thank you, Mayor Higdon. Appreciate that.
Commissioner Urban?
So Andy, I want to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Now we have you, well, sort of have you. We have a zoning petition going on right now at the Briley and the expansion of that area on Independence Point Parkway and turning the bend off of Old 51. I'd like to see that kind of come to some resolution pretty quickly because the petitioner you all keep pointing fingers at one another and we're not getting a resolution. And this petition has been going on since I think June. We'd like to get some resolution on that. Is there anything you can do to push some buttons to make that happen?
I would like to have some resolution on that as well. It's really a big unknown for us. We have provided our feedback to the petitioner with our suggestions for how we could be accommodated. We have not received any feedback from the documentation that we provided. So we've had conversations with your staff as of last week about this topic, and we would very much like this to come to a head because it's a major unknown and a risk for the project. So I'm fully on board with however we can move this football forward.
So we need to get both parties in a room, lock the door, and don't let you out until we get it decided.
I love it.
Okay.
That's how these things get built.
I'll call Wyatt tomorrow.
Tell Wyatt to give me a call.
Any other questions or comments? Well, Andy, thank you so much for giving this presentation. It was great work, and we look forward to continue our work with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving on to item B, consider tourism grant awards. I will explain what we're kind of doing here. The board will vote on each of these separately. Any elected official who serves as a director, officer, or governing board member for any of the organizations may not vote in this process and must recuse themselves just for that item. Again, because of something that the state legislature passed a few years ago, we can no longer just do it in one chunk. So I'll bring Corey up to announce the organization. We'll recuse who needs to be recused, and then we will vote upon it. Corey? Yes.
Before we begin, I just want to ask Mr. Buckley a question. On American Legion Post, I'm not like serving, but I wasn't sure if I should recuse myself since that post is named after my family.
Naming after family, not cause that only if you were actually a board member serving on that board.
Okay, just want to be
So
safe.
you're fine.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Board. The tourism grant program offered by the town of Matthews is certainly one that's been successful and provides financial support to local nonprofits that provide programs and events designed to encourage visitation and tourism into Matthews. This grant program is funded completely by hotel motel occupancy tax, prepared food and beverage tax, and the like, and these sources that we collectively refer to as the tourism fund. So this year there was $89,561 available. We had 7 applicants. The Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee serves as that group that evaluates the applications and make a recommendation to you. And I have Howie Lavender here. He's going to talk through the process and the way that the advisory committee came to these recommendations.
Thank you. I just want to thank you all for having the foresight a couple of years ago to take a percentage of the fast food hotel motel tax and put it into this fund rather than as was done in the far distant past, just a static amount every year. What happens is all of these groups apply. They have all had their feet held to the fire in terms of audience or participant numbers in the past, reasonable projections. Some are certainly better than others, but there has been a major sea change over the past couple of years in terms of the quality, top to bottom, that we're getting here. What we did is Corey and 3 of our 9 members went through these applications at length as a subcommittee and came up with the recommendations. The recommendation was then taken before the entire committee and voted on. We had 7 applicants this year: Charlotte Junior Rugby, Matthews Playhouse, Charlotte City Ballet, the Kiwanis Clubs, Labor Day Race, Mara, and the Matthews Chamber have all been longstanding. They've all done these events before, and they have all been here for tourism in the past. And every one of them has shown, and once again, I have to talk pre-COVID, unfortunately, because the numbers were skewed because of that. But going back to the last time they ran the live events, they've all shown that it's money well spent. They are putting heads in beds. They are bringing bodies into town. The one new one this year was Hooks-Ohr. And while Hooks-Ohr isn't new in town, we all know them. They do great things. Their baseball season was a new thing. Committee felt that it was certainly a reasonable request in light of what they projected and what they do for the community. Once again, I apologize. Our Vice Chair, Susan Chambers, who sat on the subcommittee, was supposed to be here tonight, but she had some kind of unfortunate allergic reaction to something. So I'm kind of working on the fly here. But if you have questions about the subcommittee, Corey did sit in on that and he can answer that for you. But I want to thank you again. I think this program has been highly successful. And I think it's shown year in and year out that the money we're paying out has been coming back, far more than what we're putting out, not to mention increasing the quality of life here. And every one of these organizations is a nonprofit, a 501c3 or similar.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Buckley?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I would like Commissioner Hoover to just elucidate just a little bit your association with it. I'm sorry, I was listening for the word board, didn't hear it, but there is a commentary, not a commentary, but an additional word in that statute that says or serve on that board or be associated with that board. So if you could just kind of clarify your association with it. I'm sorry to have to do this again.
No problem. Yes, my great uncle was the first to be killed in the war. So they have named in World War I, they've
Right.
named it after him. So that's the association I have.
Okay, but you are just, you say you just attend those meetings.
I attend no meetings.
Oh, okay, so.
I just, it's
it's
named
just-
after,
it's-
in
oh, it's
honor
just the
of
naming.
my,
Oh, okay,
uh-huh.
then there's no association then under that statute. There's an association, but it's not associated with like a board member would. So you're
Right.
fine to participate.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tufano.
When the vote comes for the Bookstore American Legion Post 235, I need to recuse myself. I'm a vice commander of that post.
So we'll address that when each comes. So Corey, do you want to get started on these?
Yes, so the recommended motions are, motion one to approve the recommended tourism grant award of $16,851 to the Charlotte Junior Rugby Association.
And no one needs to be recused for the- Commissioner Tufano.
Yes, the amount of 89,561, is that was reduced because that is equal to the percentage of the tourist fund, or is that the reason?
That is roughly 5% of the existing tourism.
And that's our current policy. So the 89,000, the reason for reducing everything is to stay within the 5% of the tourism. fund.
Correct.
Okay,
Reduce it, oh, I'm sorry, from the applicant request.
right,
Yes, yes.
right. Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, it's 5% of the last completed fiscal year. So we run a little bit behind in terms of looking back to be able to determine the amount. So that's why it fluctuates every year.
Do you want to make a motion as each one goes by, or you want to wait until he rifles through?
No, we
I'm
want to
sorry.
we want to make them individually as we go.
Yeah,
So-
right, but I mean, you want us to go ahead and make a motion now on that, and he goes to the next one, or do you want him to talk about them all and we go down the list? I'd rather hit them one at a time as he goes.
Yeah.
Okay, then you have a question.
I do have a question, because as we're looking at this, I would like to look at the number in total. I noticed that all of the numbers are increased from fiscal year 2022, except for the Playhouse, which has decreased funding. And so to me, I don't know if we want to discuss it as far as the balance, the total balance at 5%, or if we have discussions with each line on it.
What is the recommendation there? Do you want to talk about that when it comes to it, or do
Uh,
it now?
Either way, I can talk about it now or when the recommendation comes.
Mr. Buckley, is there any issue if they talk about it all now when a couple members have to be recused from individual applicants?
That would be a problem for that commissioner. We don't want to get a commissioner in trouble with that because that's a criminal statute. So we'll protect them 100%. So it would be best to discuss it individually when that person who is on that board recuses himself before we have that discussion.
Okay, we will discuss them individually.
All right. Am I gonna, I can
think-
repeat it.
I think there's some confusion here. So I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion for the first one, because that seems to be held sacrosanct. No one's got any issues with it. So let's get this one out of the way. So I'd like to go ahead and make a motion. We recommend tourism grant award of $16,851 to the Charlotte Junior Rugby Association.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Urban, a second by Commissioner Garner. All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously.
All right, motion number two is to approve a recommended tourism grant amount award of $37,500 to the Matthews Playhouse of the Performing Arts.
Commissioner Garner, do you have a question here?
I have a recommendation that we increase funding for that in light of the Theater Charlotte closing. There's sort of an increased maybe urgency to fully fund local theater, and removing some of that funding from what they've received from us previously seems harmful to the institution.
I concur with you. I think that would be a good move. I guess the question is what is what's the needle mover if we up that money?
In what regard?
To the, would we be breaking any statutes on what we've done before? It's not gonna hurt us financially if we were to up that to what it was last year.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if I may, in the past, this board has added money in,
Okay.
Depending on, I know Playhouse at one point, the chamber at one point, there were supplemental allocations put in to increase the amount of total funds available.
And I do believe some of that was before we set the policy, so it was a little bit more freewheeling. So that was part of what generated the interest in having the policy. As far as adding to it, it's certainly the will of the board. If memory serves me, with the tourism fund, we had allocated all of the projected revenues to expenses within that line. And so we would be looking to tap into tourism fund balance if you wanted to add to it. I don't have the available fund balance offhand. We have hit that fund hard for the last few years, and I know that we have some funds earmarked for the Veterans Memorial Park to be improved in the future. Certainly, I think we're talking about a nominal enough amount of money that it's certainly not going to make or break, but just be aware that at this point, barring revenues exceeding forecast, it would be tourism fund balance, and we would need to bring a budget amendment back to the board next time. But if that's the will of the board, we certainly can do it.
Thank you for that clarification, Commissioner Urban.
So Commissioner Garner, are you saying to award what they had in 2022 at 41,000? Are you talking more than that?
I would recommend 42,000. It looks like there's, between, I don't know, 600 and 6,000. Is that, no, sorry. It's about, each of them has about 3,000, I think is the difference. So each of them has a varying amount between. My question was, I think when I was asking initially is, are we massaging out the 89,561 so that each individual organization
and
takes a little bit of a cut to make up for the theater's increase? Or are we, if the board is comfortable with allocating, I would say 42,000 to the Playhouse. I think that would be a fair number for them.
And if I could add a few comments about the reasoning behind the amount. Certainly the Matthews Playhouse is an organization that we wholeheartedly supported over the past couple of years, and certainly the reduction in the amount awarded does in no way reflect the advisory committee's opinion of the application they submitted. What the conversation that took place in this to come up with the recommendation was looking at the application. Matthews Playhouse shared that, well, let me back up. So the criteria that they use to evaluate the applications, one of the criteria is viability. And so the application shared that they received a grant in the amount of, I want to say it was $180,000 or something like that from another source. And the committee looked at that and then looked at some of the other organizations where those dollars could be used a little more effectively. That sort of, I guess, was their reasoning for massaging and I'd say reducing the amount that was awarded last year.
Understood it to be a one-time COVID grant, COVID-related grant.
Yes, but again,
for arts venues that had been shuttered. That
Yeah.
was basically what the rationale was behind the grant.
Thank you.
so I did just want to share that.
Yeah, I know that that they are getting funding from elsewhere, and I think they've gotten some of this CARES Act funding, and but they were also hit hard during COVID and had to shut down. And again, small theaters are closing around the region. It would be, an extra $4,000 certainly is not going to make or break them, but it would show confidence in their ability to continue doing the good work that they do for Matthews. And for that reason, I would support making this a motion that we allocate 42,000 for the Matthews Playhouse.
Commissioner, we have a motion on the floor, but Commissioner Hoover. Okay.
Okay, they actually requested 50,000, right?
Correct.
And what got it down to that amount?
So the committee, one of the tools they use is they look, you can see many of the organizations, they have requested dollars before. So the launch point has typically been what they received last year. And then they just go up and down from there and really look at the way that they rated the applications. Some got more, some got a little less, but that was sort of the process.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Garner. Do we have a second? I will second that motion. So we have a, we have a motion by Commissioner Garner, a second by Mayor Pro Tem McCool. All in favor?
And that was a motion of 42,000.
For 42,000. All, we open it for discussion and comments, questions?
Yeah, I do. In lieu of what Corey just shared with us, if they've got another grant, some money from somewhere else of $100,000, if we're gonna raise it now to anything, I would recommend to go back to the 41 rather than 42, simply because that's what we gave them last year. But they did get some more support from somewhere else, which I think is, from what I'm hearing from Corey, is that's the only one I'm thinking as I look, the only one that came down under what they got last year. My separate recommendation would be 41 instead of 42.
Is that a motion? Okay, we have a
Substitute motion.
We have a
That would
substitute
have to be
motion.
a substitute motion.
So a substitute motion by Commissioner Whitley. And a second by Commissioner Hoover. So what's the procedure? Vote on the first.
Would vote on the substitute motion first.
Okay. All right. We have a substitute motion by Commissioner Whitley and a second by Commissioner Hoover. All in favor? All opposed? That passes 5-1.
All right, motion number 3 is to approve recommended tourism grant award amount of $6,000 to the Charlotte City Ballet.
Any questions, comments, or motions?
I'm more than happy to make a motion to recommend tourism grant award of $6,000 to the Charlotte City Ballet.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Urban, a second by Commissioner Garner. We have some discussion.
Yes.
Commissioner Tafano?
How often does the Charlotte City Ballet perform here in Matthews?
The application was for the two performances they have at the Matthews Community Center. It's a spring and a holiday show, I believe it is.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Urban, a second by Commissioner Garner. Any more discussion? All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously.
All right, motion number 4, to approve the recommended tourism grant amount award of $1,410 to the Kiwanis Club of Matthews.
Any questions, comments, or motions?
I'll make a motion that we approve a $1,410 tourism grant to Kiwanis Club of Matthews Labor Day 5K race.
I'll second that.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Garner, a second by Commissioner Whitley. Any discussion? Commissioner Tafano?
What services does the Kiwanis Club provide to the town of Matthews?
On the application, they listed the Labor Day 5K race that they hold on that Labor Day Monday. They listed the number of runners they attract, and I'll say their stay around Matthews before and after the race.
Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Garner, a second by Commissioner Whitley. Any other discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously.
All right, motion number 5, to improve the recommended tourism grant award of $17,000 to the Matthews Athletic and Recreation Association.
For clarification, my father serves on this board. I've asked Commissioner, our town attorney, every time we vote on this, if I need to recuse myself, I'll ask once again.
You do not.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments, or motions?
I'll make a motion that we approve Matthews Athletic Recreation Association Tour Spring Falls, July amount of $17,000.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Whitley, a second by Commissioner Garner. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I serve on the Chamber Board. I'd like to recuse myself from Matthew Chamber.
You stand in recusal.
It's recusal, yes.
All right, motion number 6 is to approve recommended tourism grant award of $9,000 to the Matthews Chamber of Commerce.
I'll make a motion that we approve $9,000 to the Matthews Chamber of Commerce.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Garner, a second by Commissioner Urban. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously.
Can I come back? Can I come back now?
And Larry can come back now. He stands out of recusal. Thank
All
you.
right, and motion number 7 is to approve recommended tourism grant award of $1,800 to the Hooks or American Legion Post 235.
And I'm requesting to be recused. I'm a vice commander of that post.
Mark Tavano has recused himself.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the $1,800 for Hook or American Legion Post 235 in the amount of $1,800.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Whitley, a second by Commissioner Urban. Any discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? That passes 4-1. And Commissioner Tavano is back in. And Commissioner Garner voted no. Okay,
Thank you.
little shaky, but we got there. Awesome. Now on to item C, receive monthly budget report from Teresa Falk. I'm hoping it's positive news as always. No pressure.
Show us the money.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the board. So once again, they saved the best for last. Here we are with the budget report. Hopefully there's no controversy over this. Things are still moving along rather smoothly, I would say. Avalon tax revenue collections are up 9.43% over the same time period last year. Local option sales tax is up 19.58% over the same time last year. Recreation revenues are up 53.23% because we are now able to have activities and have the events that have been postponed and or canceled for the last 2 years. So things are moving rather well in that area. Occupancy tax is up 1.22%. Rental car tax is up 2.4%. And the prepared food and beverage tax, I don't know if you noticed, but there's a very large amount that was received all at one time. The city of Charlotte is supposed to submit that in 2 payments. However, they made a mistake and submitted the full year at one time. So that is the full amount, which came in 14.9% higher than what we had budgeted that for. So that is very good. And that is that tax is a year in arrears. And that's how they, they take the prior year and then during this, so that was the FY22 actual income, and they distribute it to the towns in FY23. So again, things are looking very well. And I did some calculations on the pre-COVID sales tax versus where we are now. And if you go all the way back to July of 2019, which was, the pre-COVID numbers, the sales tax numbers for July of 2022 are 57.5% higher than they were in July of 2019. So whatever this great movement with sales tax is, we'll take it and we'll just keep on keeping our fingers crossed that it continues to move in this direction, even with the fact that inflation has steadily increased, obviously, since from 1.8% in 2019 to 8.5% in 2022. The sales tax has still continued to, amaze everyone across the state in how well they are performing.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Thank Commissioner Tufano.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
it's probably a caveat on the rental car tax is probably because the rental car rates have just absolutely gone crazy. All right.
Yes.
So it is an increase, but it's an increase because of not the necessary usage or number of rentals, but the cost per rental has just gone nuts.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that has contributed
All right, thank
to
you.
it. Yes.
Seeing no other comments, I want to thank you for another good report. I expect a good one next month as well.
Thank you.
We will move on to agenda item number 10, the mayor's report. Mayor Higdon, I know you have some comments you wanted to share.
Sure, thank you. And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for running this meeting. I am in sunny San Diego, attending an engineering conference, and that's why I wasn't able to be there in person tonight. Prior to this meeting, I participated in another virtual meeting with Debbie Foster, CJ O'Neill, Darren Hallman, and we met with the North Carolina State graduate student, Jeremy Davis, who's doing some tree data work for us. And I just wanted to share with you, he's going to try to come back, either film a report or come talk to the entire board in person, but really neat use of GIS capabilities. They were talking about a resolution from satellite photographs of 10 meters. And then CJ talked about some technology that can go down to 2.3 inches. So we could tell, what species of slug you have in your backyard from a satellite. So it's pretty amazing. But what the real exciting portion of all this is it's going to allow us to do a very, very accurate tree survey. Tell us what percentage of Matthews has trees. At some point, we may be able to identify specific species of trees. We hope to have an app at some point on our website that will let people look at legacy trees and things like that, important trees in town. It's all very exciting. One thing that's a little concerning, as you might guess, is he did look at some historic data, and we're losing our tree canopy because we're building more and more developments. And so we're somewhere in the 40s now, 45%, but as recently as a few years ago, we were 50%. So we can see that going down. But another neat outcome of this is this technology will have the ability to show us if XYZ development goes in, how much it'll reduce our tree canopy as a percentage. So a lot of really neat data. It was interesting talking to that young gentleman. Last thing I want to talk about tonight is obviously the bonds. And I'll just say this, I wish there was less vitriol and less venom spewing and less invectives thrown. And I wish we could just discuss it as reasonable adults. And I think most of us are. I see people at the grocery store, I see people around town, I see people on the Greenway, and some people are against the bonds and some are for them for whatever reason. For me, there's really two things that have been brought forward that are perhaps reasonable reasons to object to the bond referendum. And the first is simply the cost or the tax implications. But I reject the idea that we shouldn't do it now because somehow it's going to be less expensive in the future. I serve on the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization, and we've seen NCDOT projects go up orders of magnitude in less than 10 years, and 10 times more than their original projections. So I think if we don't do this now or in the reasonable near future, we're going to lose an opportunity. It's going to become cost prohibitive, and we may not ever be able to do it. The other thing I want to bring forward is some folks have said, and many people have said that the country is going to fall into a recession or maybe even a depression. Well, if these bonds are approved and suddenly we find ourselves in economic disarray, we can always not let them, but we'll have the ability to let them or issue them when the economy improves. Most folks that I've heard about that do that sort of thing and analyze interest rates think that they're going to peak going up sometime in the spring or summer of next year and then start going down again. And I'll submit this, as I did in previous meetings, that our interest rates, even at their current rate or if they go up, are among the historically lowest ever in my lifetime, and I'll be 60 years old soon. I went back and looked at the last 50 years, and we're still at a very low interest rate. So this is the opportunity to do it. Secondly, some have brought forward the idea that we shouldn't invest money in Purser-Halsey Park because the county owns the park and they might want to take it back or sell it from underneath us. We have signed a 50-year lease with the county. We have right of first refusal that goes through 2057. It can be used for nothing less than a park until that time has gone by. And further, we had conversations with Mecklenburg County Manager Dina Diorio this weekend and said, do you have any plans whatsoever to claw back Purser-Halsey Park? And she said, absolutely not. There are no plans to take the park back. If we use that as a logical reason to reject the bonds, then there'd be a lot of parks that would never be upfit because many of them throughout the county are owned by the county and leased to towns. So I don't think that's a legitimate argument. Finally, I just want to say that yesterday I was in church and we had an opportunity to sing a hymn from Jane Marshall called "What Gift Can We Bring?" And one of the lines in it kind of reminded me of the bonds. It goes like this: give thanks for the past, for those that had vision, who planted and watered so dreams could come true. And so I think this bond is an opportunity for us to plant a seed, not only for us to enjoy, but for the future, for our children and our grandchildren to enjoy these quality of life improvements to the town. Now, all that being said, if you're still against them and you don't like the tax implications, then please vote against them. We want as many people to vote as possible, and we will honor the will of the residents of Matthews. So go vote, whether you're for them or not. We will absolutely honor the will of the majority. That's all I have to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Higdon. I just want to thank all the people who came out tonight. We had quite a crowd. Usually there's only a few people here, so we had quite a crowd. I was glad to see that. That's all I have. Moving on to the town attorney's report.
No report, Mayor Pro Tem.
Move on to the town manager's report.
2 items, just a reminder that Positively Matthews is coming up on November 5th from 10 to 3 in Stumptown Park. So whether you have a dog, you like dogs, or you just want to get out, we encourage you to come spend some time at Stumptown for that great event. And secondly, we have received notice from Mecklenburg County Solid Waste Management that the lawn and leaf bags, the paper bags that we've been giving out for the last number of years, that they will not be providing those to us as they have in the past. They cited logistics and cost, but we did not get additional detail. So we do think that this is a great event. This is a great service to be able to provide to our community and a much better way to collect your leaves and lawn trimmings than putting them in plastic bags. So we do have staff working to identify what the cost would be for us to secure our own bags to still be able to provide that service to the community. So I'll keep the board updated on that, but it is our goal to still be able to provide those bags to the public. So stay tuned on that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, Mayor Higdon.
Sorry, Becky, does that mean the county will not be offering these bags at their recycling centers to everybody? Do you know?
They said that they would not be providing them out to the localities. They didn't get into specifics of whether or not they would still be at their facilities, but we can find that out and that can be part of letting folks know.
Right, because I took a computer to one of their recycling centers about a year ago and they were allowing each resident of Mecklenburg County to take 5 bags with them. So it may be that people can still get them if they go to one of the recycling centers like the Foxhole in Charlotte or one of the other ones.
Thank you. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Whitley, a second by Commissioner Urban. All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously.